I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with a cattle market summary for the week ending July the 15th, where this past week was very indicative of the cattle business here of late and kind of in classic form. If you look at the way it went through the week here, your live and feeder cattle futures on Monday were down big. Live cattle were down nearly $3 and feeder cattle were down right at $4. Tuesday down some, not a whole bunch. Wednesday bounced back big in the live cattle arena there, over $2.50. Feeder cattle were up some. Thursday it was the feeder cattle that were up big, and fats not quite so much, but then bringing up a lot of optimism, and then just to pull it right back out Friday with feeder cattle down $1.80 on Friday to end the week at $110.92 on the August contract. Feeder cattle were down $2.12 with the August contract there at $139.57. But we had contract lows on Tuesday. It looked like maybe we had found a bottom on some of these things, and maybe some support there, and we were going to bounce back. And then Thursday was a pretty good day, and then there was some optimism there. And then at the end of the week, seems like it's always negative at the end of the week, whether it's profit taking on some of this high frequency trade through the week or what it is. But it just seems like you're always ending the note on a downer on Friday, starting the week on a downer early in the week, and then it gets real volatile midweek and gives some reason to think that we might have some hope just to pull it back away at the end of the week. But your fat cattle trade this week, it didn't have a whole lot of it really. Had some kind of weak trade there early in the week, and then we thought maybe, like the board there on Thursday, we're going to get some things done. But ultimately on Friday, didn't have a whole lot of trade for the week. Most of your live sales in all your major feeding regions, except for Texas, which I think we talked last week, they sell less than 3% of their cattle on negotiated cash trade, so really not enough to talk about. But in the other four regions, 117 was the live price, which was mostly $3 lower for the week, but about steady with what they traded with earlier in the week after that kind of a false hope there in the middle of the week. Nebraska did trade one string of live cattle at 119 on Thursday, which would have been better, but your significant trade was at 117, and that's $3 lower. Your dress trade at 187, 188, mostly $3 to $4 lower than last week's trade, but kind of right in there with what was going on earlier in the week. Your slaughter ended up a little better than what a lot of people had thought it was going to be. Ended up for the week 594,000, which is 52,000 better than the same week a year ago, but it's going to be better. We get into this coming week now. We're not going to have to compare or look back to a holiday week, and we can get in there a better comparison, apples to apples. Box beef cutout value has been very disappointing. We knew that they were going to try to find a bottom. We've hoped that they found a bottom, but probably still got a little bit more to go, but nearing some low levels for the year there, with your choice boxes on the average sales through this past week at 206 even, which is down $3.33, and your select carcass is down 177 at 194.48. I was at Denver, Colorado this whole last week, and between the Cattle Feeders Summit and the NCBA Summer Business Meeting, had the opportunity to talk to a lot of people. Bad thing is, didn't find a whole lot of optimism out there. You know, I talked to independent farmer feeders from the upper Midwest that are trying to add value to their farm by marketing their corn through feeding cattle, but they struggle so much with trying to market their fed cattle that they always feel like they're getting kind of the short end of the stick. Talked to a feedlot there out west, out in California, whose feedlot's only about 20% full because he's having a hard time getting any cattle bought that he can get some decent risk management for. So he's got investors there that are wanting to buy some cattle and put them in the feedlot and do that investment, but just can't seem to find any cattle that will pencil out, and a lot of people are having that trouble. But also out in the west there, it's difficult to try to get the marketing done on the fat cattle there. You know, you get into one of those deals where you basically have to let people slaughter the cattle and then cut up the meat and see how they're going to get along selling it before you know where you're at. We might as well be in the sheep industry. We talked about it going to the hogs last week, and now it's just about going to the sheep. But basically this whole fat cattle deal is struggling because of the lack of negotiated competitive cash trade, and we still have a very competitive feeder market, which makes it even tougher on these cattle feeders. Not that they don't agree that that's the way it ought to be, but they would like to sell some fat cattle in a competitive market, something just even a percentage of the competitiveness that they have to find in the feeder cattle market. We had big videos this week. Superior had their week in the Rockies. Couldn't have come at a worse time to open the week with that sharply down trade. A lot of those cattle will be put up at a later date sale, hoping that they get a better market. But with this thing kind of on a bearish tone, they probably would have been better off if they'd have just went ahead and sold the cattle. The best day to sell cattle this past week was your feeder cattle was on Thursday. We talked, if you watched there late last week, in the Flint Hills, a lot of those cattle were scheduled to ship. Had trucks ordered and everything, but didn't know where they were going, because normally those cattle are sold direct in the country. They didn't have a place for them to go. But on Thursday, when that board did pop for the feeder cattle, they did have an opportunity to sell those cattle, and they sold a world of them on Thursday. Didn't see many of them reported. Not sure why Market News wasn't able to gather those up, but I heard myself, and just the contacts I have, heard of about 50 loads of cattle weighing around that 8.5 at 145. But and there would have been a whole lot more than that. That wasn't talking to too many people there. But they did have the opportunity to sell those, and then probably by Friday that opportunity was gone. So those guys, those grazers out there in the Flint Hills and the Osage, had to be on their toes if they wanted to catch that opportunity on Thursday. For the week in the spot market on feeder cattle, they were a week to $5 lower than the previous week's light trade due to the holiday there. But just not much to get excited about. This heat is really making it tough. It's making it tough on the cattle feeders and the cattle producers that have cattle ready to sell. And even these guys in the big grazing areas, although they're out there and they don't have to let those cattle stand around in cramped stockyards and things like that, but still, when it gets up in the 90s, not long after the sun comes up, and then it gets way over 100, or it gets up in the high 90s with some high humidity, it's just miserable, and cattle just melt in it, and it's hard to move cattle around in it, and you have a big chance of death loss there. But look at Cattle Market Central late in the week on Friday in Bowling Green, at the Bluegrass Stockyards, Richmond, in Kentucky there. They had a load of steers weighed 793 on Friday, bring 142.10, and that's not too awful bad. If you're interested in that Cattle Market Central, log on cattlemarketcentral.com and get your free login. If you want to get that on your tablet or on your cell phone, smartphone there, go on to BMC, Beef Market Central, which is sponsored by Merck Animal Health. If you do use Merck Animal Health products, you can tap into that information right away. But working here back home at my DV Auction home office in Canyon, Texas, and we'll talk to you on Wednesday.